Hola chicas! So I finally decided that this video will be shoot in English. I think it's gonna be easier for me to do that video in English. Plus, I feel like my English has gotten a little worse. It's gonna be easier for me in English. It's because I read a lot of books or I listen to books in English. So I felt like this was gonna be easier for me to talk about books when I do everything in English. Okay, so I also have my laptop here. The beauty she is. Wow, beautiful. So many beautiful stickers. We love it. Why? It's because the plan is on my Notion. Notion, we love you. So yeah, that's the number one thing I got asked like this past month and a half, like since January, is like, how did I get back into reading? Because I have read and listened to 14 books today. I've finished listening to The Song of Achilles today. How did I get back into reading so like vigorously? How did I manage to find my will to start reading again? So it all started when I was watching Moya, the video here. When I started watching her video about like preparing her journal for 2022. And she was like, I've set a goal of reading 22 books in 2022. And I was like, oh, I'm always, in my bullet journal, I always have a spread that says like readings of the month, and I have 2 books written, and sometimes I don't even complete one. And so I was like, okay, I need to set myself a goal for the entire year. And so at the beginning of Jan, end of December, I can't really remember when it was, I actually decided to set myself a goal for the new year of 10 books for the entire year. I was like, that seems doable because for so many years I hadn't been on my reading game. And I was like, okay, 10 books seems about right. And then my favorite YouTuber, Catherine Karras, I keep on talking about her for the past 2 videos. Catherine Karras actually made a readings of 2021 and how she also got back on her reading grind because she used to be a booktuber. And so she was talking about like how she always read, but she kind of felt forced to read a certain type of books. And I actually got that. I kind of felt a sort of pressure to read. For example, I had that pressure was to read classical, like classic books, like Pride and Prejudice, which I love, don't get me wrong, but like Pride and Prejudice, The Catcher in the Rye, To Kill a Mockingbird, all those classics that I had never read because of course I studied in Europe, so we have our own classics, but it's the same. I felt pressure to read like Candide by Voltaire and these types of books that are not my genre. So it was such an excruciating pain for me to read these books that were like, oh, you should have read these books by the age of 25 or whatnot. So to me it was more of a struggle reading that I was actually enjoying it. But I have to put a disclaimer, I've always been a huge reader. Like if you see my libraries, I have like 2 completely full libraries. I love reading. I absolutely always adore reading. Here's a fun fact, when we arrived in Belgium I did not speak French. But my mom wanted to keep on improving my Spanish, so when I was little, instead of my mom reading me stories, she would sit next to me and she was like, okay, read me the story. So I've always had like a great relationship with reading. It's never been like a hassle for me to read. I've never like been like, oh my gosh, I have to read a book. But when it came to classics that I had to read either for school or because people were like, oh, you should read this one, it took me ages. I really liked reading. For example, I read 2 years ago, I read To Kill a Mockingbird. I love the story, I love the meaning of the story, but because it's written in such a classical, realistic way, I hate it. So that's why these past few years, I kind of forced myself to read all those classic books, and I ended up not enjoying them. Like I'd be like reading the 7 books of Harry Potter in like a month and a half maybe, and then it would take me 4 months to finish To Kill a Mockingbird that was like this big. So I started like focusing back on what I like to enjoy when I'm reading a book. And so when I set the goal for 10 books this year, I was like, okay, I will read books that I actually caught my eye and that I'm actually interested in the plot. So I started with the new book from Connor Frenna. Connor came out with House Fires, and I was like, okay, I've always enjoyed his writing because he writes about his life and he is my favorite YouTuber ever. I've watched him since I was 14, so I started with this one. And the way Connor writes is like, he writes a chapter about like what is going on in his life, and then he'll write poems, and I just loved it. I really like that. So I was like, okay, that's a safe bet to start with this book because I know the author. I know I will read this book pretty fast and I will be happy reading it. The second book I've read was China Rich Girlfriend. I don't have it right now. I don't have it right now because I just lent Anais my 3 Crazy Rich Asian like trilogy. I lent them to her yesterday, so like I don't have them physically here, but I've read these books also. Like I read China Rich Girlfriend and Rich People's Problem, like the second and third book of the series this year, because it's a light read. I've enjoyed the first movie, I've enjoyed the first book, I've enjoyed the second and third book too. It's funny, it's light, you don't have to think much, it's amazing. I love them. So yeah, I started with books that I knew, like, okay, these are books that are a safe bet, I will enjoy reading them. And then I read The Catcher in the Rye. It's a really thin book, but because I was like already into my book reading path and I was reading books that I really like, I was like, okay, that's a classic, but everyone says it's great, it's cool, I can maybe relate to the story and whatnot. So I read this book, and for once I read a classic in one sitting. I finished the book. Did I really enjoy it? No, I think I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads because it was really slow, really, again, written in a really realistic way that I don't really like. But I read it in one sitting, and that was when I realized there was like some change. That was how I got back into like reading physical books. It was by setting a goal of 10 books, which I now changed to 22 for 2022, of like 22 physical books, and I start reading with like safe bets. Like I would just know that I would get to the end of this book, that I will enjoy it, and then I could maybe like read something that's out of my favorite genre kind of situation. So that was a train of thought. And then I've discovered audiobooks. Here's the thing, I was a paperback. I needed papers. I was a paper supremacist. I could not fathom how you could listen to a book. I was like, no, you need the paper, you need to feel the smell of the paper. And I've discovered audiobooks on YouTube first. I wanted to read the Percy Jackson series for the longest time. I had never like brought myself to read them. I had watched the movies. I enjoyed the movies. I read the book. I still enjoy the movies. Logan Lerman, I love you. Alexander Daddario, I love you. End of discussion. Anywho, so I listened to the 5 first books, like the Percy Jackson books, on YouTube. A beautiful, beautiful, gorgeous, gorgeous girl read all the 5 first books. We love her. I have to say though, the first one, it took me about a week and a half to finish, to get through the entire book. So that's why I think the first book I rated like 3 stars on Goodreads, because it took me a long time to like adjust myself to, okay, what can I do while I'm listening to the book, like things like that. But then I listened to the second one, Sea of Monster, and it took me like, okay, this one is the shortest one too, because it took her like 6.5 hours, whatnot. But like I was like, oh, I listened to this one pretty fast. It took me 3 days. And then I got into the Titan's Curse, and I was really anxious. So at 5 a.m. I started Titan's Curse. At 5 a.m. on Saturday I started the Titan's Curse. I finished it at 6 p.m. on Sunday, and then I started the Battle of the Labyrinth, and I was like, oh, that's amazing. I loved it. And then I got to the Last Olympian book, and these 2 last books, it took me 4 days to finish the 2 last books of the series. I was so into it. Loved it, loved it. And then I was like, oh my gosh, but audiobooks, it's amazing. You can do other things. You can. I was journaling while listening to it. I was like, oh, I'm playing Zelda Skyward Sword while listening to audiobooks. I was like, oh my god, that's amazing. So I got an Audible subscription and another app for audiobooks. I discovered audiobooks and I realized that this was another way of reading, even though you're listening, but I will get still the same information as if I was reading a book. So, and it's a little, let's just say, more tech friendly and easier for the people who have trouble reading and trouble like concentrating on words on the pages, and your eyes get tired and whatnot. Like, you can actually do something else. You're not obligated to always look at something from up close or whatnot. Like, your eyes are hurt in the end. So honestly, audiobooks are the thing. So yeah, those are the two things that got me back into reading and that motivated me. So what I can suggest, depending on the type of reader you are, if you used to be a huge reader like me, start with like either rereading some of your favorite books, like that might be the Harry Potter series, the Cherub series, a Dan Brown book, a Joël Dicker book, I don't know, whatever genre fits you best, you should start with that, or with a book that you know it's in your genre, it's, you know, you will enjoy the book. You should start with these. You should start like with three, 4 books in that area, and then start venturing more into the book world. For my readers that aren't so much readers, I would honestly suggest audiobooks or books that you see that everyone around you enjoyed. Like, for example, I don't know, I have this one in mind because everybody talks about the one, but The Love Hypothesis. I still haven't read it, but I have like so many friends that read them and they were like, oh my gosh, I love it. So maybe this one is a safe bet, so you will enjoy it. I don't know, but I will suggest going in with audiobooks first, because you can do something else. And if you're not like really, if you're a slow reader or whatnot, and that's why demotivates you to read because it will take you forever to finish a book, then I will suggest audiobooks. What I love the most about audiobooks is the fact that I can speed up the listening, the recording. I am one that watches all her YouTube videos at speed 1.75. I watch my Netflix shows at speed 1.5, so listening to audiobooks speed it up is I love it. I am not a slow reader, but I like to go fast with things, so sometimes when there's too much description, I'll be like, I'll skip the page. So that's why I love listening fast forward. But yeah, we'll go with audiobooks because I think it's a really good like starter to get back into reading. That's what I would suggest. Yeah, those are the two main things you could do to get back into reading, depending if you used to be a huge reader or you never liked reading but you feel like, oh, I should start reading. Also, super important, it's third right now in the list, but it should have been first. Find your genre. If you don't like science fiction, don't start reading Dune, you know. If you don't like fantasy, don't start reading Twilight. If you like true crime, if you don't like the genre, it will be a struggle to finish the book. So just start with books that you actually enjoy. So those are my tips. Where do I read? Where do I find my books? Like, what do I read on, etc., etc. So I tend to find my books a little bit all over the place. I just have a clear disclaimer. Since I think I've been 14 years old, I've never bought a first-hand book. Never, I think. For myself, maybe like people gifted me like books that they went to the bookstore and actually bought it. I always buy my books secondhand. But so where do I find my books? Like, you've seen this store in all of my vlogs, I feel like, but I go to Pull&Bear, whether it's in Waterloo or in Brussels. It's a secondhand bookstore. CD, vinyls, they have even video games there, everything second-handed. So I find like 80% of my books there, and I can find books in English, in French, in Spanish, even in Italian if I want, in Dutch obviously because we're in Belgium. So sort of all of my books come from there. I also like to search up on Vinted for books. I bought 2 books out of Vinted recently, actually more, but I don't have it right here. But I bought Sorcery of Thorns and Dune on Vinted. And Vinted is an app where you can sell your stuff that you don't use anymore. So I got Dune from a super sweet Dutch seller. So I got it in English, not in Dutch, I don't speak Dutch. So I got Dune in English, and I got Sorcery of Thorns, which I'm quite surprised because the title is in English. It's written Sorcery of Thorns, but it's in French. But I bought these, and these two were both €5. I got them out of the Vinted. Usually in Pall Mall, books are around €2 to €6. So for example, I got these two books from Joël Dicker. I got Le Livre des Baltimore and La Disparition de Stéphanie Melia. And I actually got the last one he wrote, which is L'énigme de la chambre 626. I lent it to Adele, that's why I don't have here. But for example, these two were €2. They're huge, they're like big books, they're not books, pocket books. These two were €2, but because the L'énigme de la chambre 626 came out in 2018 and was a more recent book, it was €6. But it's still cheaper. Like this size of a book would have cost me like at least €12 brand new. Actually no, probably 16. So 2, 6, pretty good deal. So I have these books. Other than that, I can find them on eBay. That's where my mom found House Fires by Connor Frena, and actually all the books by Connor Frena that I have, so A Work in Progress and Note to Self, were bought on eBay. Also probably half the price, and also he's an American author and he's a YouTuber author, so we don't find his books here in Belgium. So that's why that was on eBay. And for my first English books, when it wasn't like that famous, not famous to read in English, but when it wasn't that, when people weren't reading in English, like back in high school, I couldn't find like many English books like in secondhand shops, or like the books I wanted to read, I could never find them. So I would actually ask my sister that lives in California that when she would come to Belgium visit us, she would buy me books. So she always brought me like 2-3 books every single time she came to visit. So that's how I got 13 Reasons Why in English, and how I got Palo Alto by James Franco also in English, because I've never seen this book, not even translated in French. So just maybe it was only like American style. I mean, James Franco, we don't talk about him, but that book is one of my favorite books. So yeah, I love the movie too.
But James Franco, no sir, no.
So yeah, I would have like my sister buy me books and give them to me when she would come visit. Oh, there's also, now that I live in France, I would also go to a second-hand bookstore that's near my house, or to Oxfam. Oxfam sells a lot of books too. That's where I find most of my books. And now that I have like Audible and whatnot, I just look up on Amazon and find the books I want to listen to. That's like where I find most of my books. As I said, I basically only buy secondhand books. So where do I read properly? I read physical books. The Holy Grail. I'm gonna show another one. I read physical books. This one was lent to me by my beautiful friend Anaïs. It's the Lost Heroes, the Heroes of Olympus, the Lost Hero, the second series by Rick Riordan, about the Percy Jackson series, the sequel. So we have that one. I also listen to books. And to listen to books, I use both the Audible app, which I was listening to Black Sun, but I finished it. I use Audible to find books, to have like, yeah, to listen to books. I have a huge wish list, but I still haven't, like, you have credits and I want to use them wisely, so I'm still figuring out what I'm gonna do. I also use audiobooks, the app just called Audiobooks, and here I have downloaded Little Woman, Alice in Wonderland Through the Alice in Wonderland Through the Looking Glass, which is the second book of Alice in Wonderland. I have Mysterious Island by Jules Verne. I have Alice in Wonderland, of course, and I have Jane Austen, Emma, because I've started the book 2 years ago. I'm still like at page 100. So I was like, oh, this audiobook is for free, so I'm gonna download it. I'm gonna listen to it because I think I will go faster. So yeah, what I like about audiobooks that Audible doesn't. Audible has credits every month, so you can get a free book there, and there's like Audible originals that sometimes are free and whatnot, so that's really great. On audiobooks, you have actually a list of free books. All the books here were free, so that's great. Where do I also listen to books? It's on YouTube. Right now I finished the Song of the Achilles on YouTube, and I have a playlist of all my audiobooks that I listen to. As you can see, there's all the Percy Jackson's one, there's the Song of Achilles, and there's also I Will Start Call Me By Your Name. That's the next audiobook I will listen to. So I also use YouTube to listen to audiobooks. So those are the main. And as you can see, I have a Kindle app. I also have it on my iPad. And I've discovered something, guys, I didn't know. With the Prime membership, you actually have access to Prime reading. And here's the thing, maybe if you watch from America or whatnot, maybe you already knew that. We didn't know. I didn't know. None of my friends knew that you can actually do that if you have a French mail address. Thank God I have one, but that's only for French members right now. It doesn't exist in Belgium. But you have access to Prime reading, which means that you can rent books. You just have to download the Kindle app, no need of a Kindle subscription, and you just rent books from the Apple, what's it called? The Amazon store. You just go on the Amazon store and you start like downloading books. So I have actually, on my library, I have downloaded A Court of Thorns and Roses in French because so many people were talking about that book. So I was like, okay, you know what? Because it's free, because I'm renting it, I'm gonna go through the first one. It's in French. I couldn't find it in English in Prime reading, so I got it in French. I have Dance of Thieves that I've also downloaded. I don't know, it seemed like a fun game. I'm trying to get back into reading fantasy, so that's why. And I've also, but this one I had to buy, it's the Heroes of Olympus. Like, my friend lended this to me, so I have the physical copy for this one, so I will read it here. But I found like the 5 books of the entire Heroes of Olympus quintology. I don't fucking know how you say that. But like, there are 5 books. There's 5 books in the Heroes of Olympus thing. And I have on this app, I have Heroes of Olympus, the complete series, and it was like 16 euros for 5 books. So I was like, that's a steal. So I bought them. So I have all the rest here. So I use a Kindle app for this to read on my iPad. I kind of never really liked reading on a screen, but it's free, so I will do it. And also an app that I will suggest you to have if you are getting back into the reading grind and everything, you should definitely have Goodreads. That's what motivates me the most to read, when I see like how I advanced in the reading of the book, or like how far I've gone into my challenge, because you can tell like 14 of 22 books read and everything. You can see, you can put stars, and you can see what your friends are reading or what influencers you follow are reading and everything, so you get reviews. I love it. I love it. I love it. Everything that I can classify, every single time I can classify things, I can write or see what I read and what I did. I love it. I don't know why. Maybe my psychiatrist will tell me that in a month. So yeah, I highly recommend that. So you can also follow your friends and everything. So love it, love it, love it. And now for a little list of my favorite books, which I will apologize in advance because I really suck at explaining things. So bear with me. But with no particular order, here's a list of my favorite books. Of course, I will suggest you to read Alice in Wonderland and Alice Looking Through the Mirror Glass. Love them. We all know the story of Alice. It's a classic. It's a classic, a children's classic. I love it. Every single time I read it, I'm like, damn, that Lewis Carroll was on something when he wrote that. Like, dude. But these two, love them. I have them. I love them so much that I search for the audiobook so I can listen to them. Of course, the one and only, we have Harry Potter. Do you want to know how much I love Harry Potter? I have bought Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, or the Philosopher's Stone. I don't know where you watch it, how do you call it, but Harry Potter book 1. I bought it also in Italian. I have it in Spanish. I this series, I reread the series once every 2 years, and once every 2 years I rewatch the entire movies. So a good Dan Brown. Here's a thing. I have like 3 authors that I will always reread their books. I love them. So Dan Brown is the guy who wrote the Da Vinci Code. So he wrote other books. He wrote with the Da Vinci Code series. There's the first book, which is Angels and Demons, then the Da Vinci Code, then The Lost Symbol, then Inferno, and then Origin. Masterpieces. And then you also have these 2 books that have nothing to do with the history professor that is in the Da Vinci Code. It's Deception Point and Digital Fortress. What I love about Dan Brown is that the research he puts into his books, that you can actually fact check everything. It's amazing. Good stuff. Another author that is so dear to my heart is John Green. And my 2 favorite books of his are Looking for Alaska, his first book, Holy Grail, and Paper Towns. Let me read you the Looking for Alaska book. Miles Hatler's whole life has been one big non-event until he meets Alaska Young. Gorgeous, clever, and undoubtedly screwed up, Alaska draws Miles into her reckless words and irrevocably steal his heart. For Miles, nothing can ever be the same again. I love it. I reread this book so many times already. This is my favorite. And Paper Towns also. If you're lazy, you can watch a movie. It's pretty accurate. Oh, and there's a show about Looking for Alaska, but because it's my favorite book, I feel like if I watch a show, it might get rude, so I don't want to do that. But Paper Towns, the movie, was pretty accurate. I love it. Do you want to know how much I love this book? I have this book in 2 different languages. I have this book both in English and in French. And the last author that I really enjoyed, that was a parenthesis about authors that I really liked and I read all their books. Of course, Joëtica. He writes mysteries, murder, thriller, like, yeah, that genre. I've read these books so fast. Even this one, who is like, it's huge. It took me, for this one, I think it took me like a week because I was working and everything, but I loved it. It was so good. So yeah, he's always into the detective stories, murder resolving, crime resolving things. So for my true crime lover and I like a good intricate story that you have to go back 10 years prior to what happened to understand and everything. That's my man. That's my man. We love it. Truman Capote. I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce his last name. Capote. Breakfast at Tiffany's. What can I say? It's my favorite movie. I love the book. And plus the aesthetic of this book. I just love it. I think my mom found it. Actually, she also found it on eBay. We love it. Love it. Plus, I one day want to visit New York, so it just gives me all these romanticizing New York life kind of vibes. So yeah, Truman Capote's Breakfast at Tiffany's. Stefan Chbosky, The Perks of Being a Wildflower, also one of my favorite movies. That is also one of my favorite books. I love this. Here's my favorite genre of book that you can also put this one into this list. My favorite genre is like things that makes you uncomfortable in the end. And that's what this book does. It's always, and the movies even, the movie is like already making you feel awkward with the filters it has on and everything. So I just love books that makes you feel awkward in the end and you're like, I don't want to be this kid. I don't know why I love this whole situation. But yeah, The Perks of Being a Wildflower. Chef's kiss. We have The Motorcycle Diaries by Ermesto Che Guevara. What? Ernesto Che Guevara? Yes, that was before he became El Che Guevara. That was when people called him Che just because he was Argentinian. This was just before he started his guerrillas things and he became the man that we know him for. Che Guevara was just a medicine student that went on a trip around South America and saw the poverty that the people of Latin America were suffering from. And he thought that was not good. He kind of got mad. And that's like he wrote that's his diaries. It's called the Motorcycle Diaries because he traveled through South America in his motorcycle with his friend, and yeah, he wrote down everything he felt during that trip. Last of my favorite books. This one can be controversial, I don't know, see it as you want. 13 Reasons Why by J. Asher. It's also a series. I have to say though, I'm really glad with what they did with the first season. Just one little detail that pisses me off is the S word scene, when she D-word. Because in the book she said she didn't want to suffer, so she took pills. But I guess I understand why it was a shocker value. It was to highlight that this happened, so that's why they did it like that. But I was like, you were so great, you were so great. But it's okay. I love this book because when I read it, I was also going through it, and what this book highlights, and even the show highlights, is that you never know what's going into someone's mind. And that's why my favorite chapter, I was gonna say it's about Reggie, but no, that's because the actor played Reggie on on Riverdale. Zach's. Okay, there we go, finally. Zach's tape is my favorite one because it seems like it's the least impactful one. I can see it as the least impactful one for so many people. Like, actually my friends told me that when they watched the series, they were like, oh, Zach's tape is the least important. I'm like, no, Zach's tape is the most important in my eyes, because when you're already going down a rough patch and you see no end to that tunnel, you don't see the light ahead you, when you have little things that makes you happy, you hold on like dear life onto them. The one happiness she had to get up every morning to go to school, but it was taken away from her, and I think that was so important to be written like that. That's why I love it. And finally, I said Palo Alto. As I said, it's again in the makes you uncomfortable, makes you feel awkward during the entire movie. It's about misfits in California, what to do to fit in, how much would you give from yourself to fit in to somewhere. And that's what I love about this. Also, it's a movie. If you don't like it, if you don't want to read, you can watch a movie as suggested. Nat Wolff, Emma Roberts, love you. I love it. You can see how messed up teens can be, and not even, it's teens, but you can actually see how like people in their early 20s and how everyone is messed up. I really like that book. But again, it makes you, it's like compelling and gutsy. Yeah, I don't know if I made sense out of all of this. I don't know if you could like get the gist of things, if I made sense with all of what I said, because as I said, I suck at explaining. But I hope it kind of gives you an insight of the struggle that it was for me to read just even a year ago, how much I've started to enjoy reading again and how into it I am again, and the different ways I use to get back into this reading process and to get back into actually loving and enjoying reading every step of the way. So whether it's an audiobook or whether it's a physical copy or a digital copy, honestly, I cannot recommend you reading, like I cannot recommend it to you enough. That you have to read because it improves your vocab, it helps you learning languages. That's what I do. I read books in Italian to improve my Italian. I have books in Korean in order to practice my reading, not so much my understanding because I'm still lacking a lot of words, but I practice my reading in the language by reading out loud. It gives you so much more to read a book, and it's also about allowing time to read. Like, instead of binge watching your 10th episode show, maybe you should start reading a book. Maybe you should start listening to a book. Instead of, I don't know, listening to music while you're running, maybe listen to a book. When you're doing grocery shopping, maybe listen to a book. You know, or just go out for a walk and take a book with you, and then you can sit down and start reading. I loved doing that when I was in Milano, in Italy. I would just go for a walk and always had a book with me, and I would just randomly sit down and start reading. So yeah, I just hope it really motivated you and gave you like ideas on how to get back to reading, or even just how to start reading. And yeah, I hope you guys liked this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!